introduction. Lovely to be here at AUS. So I arrived this morning actually from London. I was there for a couple of days, so I haven't slept for 24 hours. I'm a little bit delirious. I'm sorry. But today's topic is about thinking about how you can maintain critical kind of discussion and maintain kind of critical thinking in your students. Now that there's AI and now they can get answers to any question, how can we kind of bring that into our education? Next slide. Okay. Cool. So how many of you, just raise your hands, already use AI in your teaching? That could be for your planning, for your own research, maybe in your teaching itself, maybe afterwards. Some pretty significant person. So this is really, really important. Like, it's only been 2 years since ChatGPT was originally kind of released to the public. But in just 2 years, we've come such a long way. Almost everyone is using it now in some way. All their students are using it. So you might have, because you're using it in your classroom, you might feel like some of these are some concerns. 100%. As someone who is in education, like in the online space, these are the comments that I get all the time. I do one-to-one consultations. I'm in schools, I'm in universities, and these are the problems that people are feeling, both students and academics. Things like over-reliance on AI, misinformation, ethical issues, plagiarism is a really big one. The one comment I get is, how can I avoid plagiarism by students? So that's really a big one. And then also just the educators themselves. So if you're a teacher, if you're a professor, if you're in university, you're new to it as well. Like, you and the students have started at the exact same point. So how can you be trained to make sure that you also know how to approach this? But the one that I want to speak about today is the creativity and the kind of critical thinking side of things. So they're going to use it, we're going to use it, but how can we make sure that the tasks that we set, the assignments that we set, the questions that we ask are not saying to them, don't use AI, but saying to them, use AI and let's think about this thing within it. So there's something that I've realized, and again, I'm sure you have as well, there's a paradox. We don't want to say, don't use it, but we also need to say, use it like this. And there are two sides to this coin. So AI 100% can enhance learning. I'm sure we've all seen it in our classrooms where we can use it ourselves, educators, to help us with things to do with our own, like tailoring students' needs or like planning our lessons and things like that. We can also use it for like feedback and grading. And then students can also use it for language support, for research, summarization tools. Like this is all really amazing. But then it can also really undermine learning if you're asking students to do something and you're just getting 1,000 words that AI has written. So just this passive question answer and then just copy and paste. This is undermining learning. Overuse for AI can weaken their creativity and their deep thinking. And again, this content, do they know that there's bias? Do they know that there's misinformation? Do they know that there's ethical issues? They can just get an answer in 5 minutes. Why would they care about these things? We have to ask them and show them that these are important things to think about. So these are kind of 3 main parts of academia where I've noticed AI to be impacted. So in writing, students can just go to a tool, PaperPal, ChatGPT, Jenny, start writing something and it will write a whole essay for them in seconds. So that can happen in writing side of things. So they can just write without knowing how that structure came about. Right? If you tell them to write again, they won't know how to write that sentence or the paragraph again. And then in STEM, so things like data analysis, things like equations, you can put any equation in and it can give out the answer, but they don't know how they got there, right? And the last thing is research. So again, when you have like a journal or research article, they can have a 50-page research article, plug it into any tool, and they can get questions for anything. But they don't know how they got that, how that got that answer, how did that come about? And this all is actually a big problem, but we can find ways of mitigating that without saying don't use it, because we know that it's here to stay, right? So this is a research paper. I was just looking online for like a research paper in this area. There actually isn't that much. Of course, AI is still really new. So there's this paper that I found that was looking at critical thinking with AI tools in younger and older generations. And they investigated the relationship between AI tool use and critical thinking skills. And they said that actually younger participants had higher dependence on AI tools, but lower critical thinking compared to older participants. And I'm guessing that's because the older ones ones have used their brains before, now the AI has come in and they just use it a bit more, but the younger ones are starting with AI. So they haven't thought before, right? They just come straight into it with AI. And then at the same, it's really important to think about the implications of AI on critical thinking, etc. So you can see in the research, it's not much at the moment, but it's definitely something that will come up a lot more as the generations start using it a lot more. So in this session, I want to focus on strategies. So I'm going to be going through 5 kind of strategies that you can use, very simple ones that you can use in setting assignments, setting tasks, that allow you to tell students to use AI, but let's now think about this thing within it. So feel free to stop me as you go along. Let's just put your hand, raise your hand wherever you discuss it for it, because I know we're probably all in different fields and different stages. The first one is inquiry-based learning with AI. So this is where we are not just getting AI to give you an answer, but actually asking questions about that. So the whole point of this session is saying we want to use AI, but how can we use AI in a way that we can make students think a bit deeply? So we're going to use AI, we get an AI-generated answer, and we're looking at different ways that prompts can impact the answer. So if I ask you to answer this question, depending on what prompt you use, we're all going to get different answers, right? And we want students to know that you're going to get different things, and you, based on what you input of your answer. So this is kind of touching upon like prompt engineering and the way you write your prompt. So students ask AI the same question, different phrasing, they compare the responses for bias, tone, accuracy, and now we're looking at why does it really matter, like why does wording really matter? So this is just an example. I've got 3 different prompts. Looking at the Industrial Revolution. The first one is what caused it. The second one is what were the social causes. And the third is it good or bad? It's all the same topic, but we have slightly different responses and slightly different answers. And also your ChatGPT and mine is going to be different because it thinks about our history and it uses that to impact the answer as well. So now what we can do is we can say, okay, here's your task, this is your question. Can we maybe use 5 different prompts, show me your answers, compare them, and let's look at the prompt you've used and think about why you got that answer based on that prompt. So what you're doing here is you're telling the student, we're using AI, but actually I want you to think about what you input, because you as the inputter, you have a big impact on the output. So you're making them think about themselves as part of the equation, because usually they don't. When it comes to AI, they just think that's correct. So these are some questions that you can ask. Think about bias, how much depth did you get depending on what prompt you put, and really the prompts are, this is one small sentence. You can put a paragraph prompt, you can tell it what to say, how many words to use, the tone of voice, all of that will give such a different response, and that's what you want students to think about when it comes to like using AI. So that's one way that you can kind of integrate it into your teaching. The second one is AI versus human. AI versus human. So, I mean, most of you, if you're educators, you'll probably can tell if a student gives you an AI response because we're so used to seeing it now. And I can just look at a paper and just tell it's AI. But students won't be able to do that. They will just get an AI response, submit it, and think it's okay. But they need to be able to know the difference between what's AI and what's human, essentially. And they can analyze the differences. So one of the ways you can do that is select maybe a news story, get one that's in a newspaper, or that's just a journalist that have written, and then also get one that's written by AI, and ask to compare. And you can do this in your fields, depending on whatever field you're in, get something that's AI, maybe get them to get the AI response, you get the article, and then compare them. And you're looking for things like bias, accuracy, depth. And this is an example. This is AI generated, so I actually just put a prompt in, got this, and this is a journalist answer, or kind of paragraph, the same thing. You can clearly see the difference between them. The human one has more sources that are reliable, so usually ChatGPT or AI might hallucinate when it comes to citations. Obviously humans don't do that, so that's one thing. It's a bit more formal, the language is a bit cleaner, it's more research backed. This one's a bit more generalized, it's saying scientists agree. What do they agree on? Who are these scientists? I see this a lot in ChatGPT, especially where it's just very like blanket statements. You can't do this in academia, right? And students, if they just copy and paste this, won't realize that this is not how you can write a research article. So just kind of showing the difference, and maybe an activity could be just printing two things out and asking them to discuss in groups, like what's the difference between human and AI, and they can start to pick that out by themselves. Again, it's about teaching them how they need to approach AI. It's not Google, it's not a Google search. This is generated information that's very dependent on your prompts, what you put in and things like that. So the third one is reverse engineering AI responses. So this is where you want to think backwards. So we got the answer, great. How did it get there, basically? So you're thinking backwards. And what you can do is put like purposeful gaps, for example, purposeful mistakes, for example, or gaps, and get them to kind of figure out how they got there, and the steps. So an example is, if you're in like maths or you have a sort of equation, what you can do is you have the question, this is the answer, okay, it's correct, right? We all have the answer, right? Great. Now you can have maybe like a table or spreadsheet on the side and ask them to break it down. What is a method? You want a specific broken down method that they are going to have to write. They have the answer, we don't care about the answer, we can all get the answer. But they have to give you the full breakdown. Then they need to look for any errors. So you're prompting them saying, any errors here, yes or no, so they're going to check for any errors. And then you can say any assumptions. So what were some assumptions that this was made on this particular question? So you're making them think beyond just the answer, because if you're just asking for the answer, then they're just going to give you the answer, right? They don't care about anything else. But you want to prompt them to think beyond just the answer, and what else are things that the AI thought about when it came across this answer, when it came to this answer. So again, what you're looking for here is not telling them don't use AI, because they're probably all going to use it. It's just how are we now going to get there? And you want this to be written, and you want to see this kind of broken down for them. And then you can discuss, were there any factors that AI might not have looked at? What would happen if I changed this number? Was this rounded up a little bit or rounded down? Are these units correct? And you're really trying to push beyond, because when we did this kind of stuff at school 15, 20 years ago, no one cared, because you had to work it out to get there. But now we know they can get there without doing a single thing. So we need to try to find other ways to test them goes beyond just the final number, essentially. Unless it's an in-person exam, then obviously they don't have access to that. But if it's something that you're letting them go home with or do, with open book, then of course you need something like that. And then the next one is ethical AI discussion. So just thinking beyond the fact that anything AI says is correct. You want them to think about any misinformation, any bias that can happen. Like I said, my ChatGPT and yours is going to be completely different because of my history, the things that I've written in it. It's going to base it off of that. Like there's times that I want to find something out, and I'll write it, and then remember something I said ages ago, like my name or something else. It's actually a bit scary because I forget that I've told it that information. So it's basing what I've said on what the answer that it's going to give me later. So it's all going to be different. So you want them to really think about that kind of side of things. Like, don't just trust anything it says at face value. So what you can do here is ask a question, and you want to analyze the response. So here's a question. I said, what caused economic inequality? Ask something a bit controversial. This is not that controversial, but you can ask something controversial in your topic, or something where there's a debate, where you might have two sides to this question. And then you want to analyze the response. So now the task is to analyze it and to identify any biases, any missing perspectives. Where are things slightly simple? So if you look at this answer, actually, it's kind of saying that if you work hard and you get your education and you get your skills, you'll be good. So it's kind of putting the ownership on the person. Is that fair? Right? It is saying that government does play a role, but it's mostly saying that it's up to you. Is that fair? Is everyone in the same situation? Does everyone have the same starting point? There's so many discussions you can have, but this would tell a student, no, it's up to you. You've got to get your degree, and then you'll be good. But it isn't that simple in real life, and that's something that I think you can pull out when it comes to getting AI answers and bias and things like that. So some discussions is like, is AI neutral? Does it favor certain viewpoints? And when you give these kind of ethical discussions, you know within your area what these discussions are, and you can kind of pull them out a little bit. How can you train them to ensure fairness? So you can look at how these tools are trained, what countries these tools are trained on, what demographics are they trained on, and you can kind of discuss this a little bit more. And then where do we see bias in real life? So we know that there's bias in humans as well. So has that bias been transferred into AI? Obviously that's an ongoing argument, so you can discuss that within your fields as well. So, this is, the task would be, here's the question, this is the answer, give us a discussion on what some kind of biases could be. So that's really, really interesting to see. And the last one, I think the last one, is the AI fact-checking challenge. So this is where you are essentially testing them, and I mean, we used to do this, I used to teach in a secondary school a few years ago in London, and we used to teach this, we used to use this technique with pre-AI where you put a mistake in on purpose, and you want to see if they catch that mistake, right? And this is exactly the same thing, but here you're going to put it into an AI-generated text. So you'll say to them that this has been generated by AI, find the mistake, right? Or check if it's true. So you will give them maybe a text, summarized text of a journal article, some mistake in there, and then you give them the journal article. Where's what's correct, what's wrong, what's the mistake. And you're again prompting them to be able to look at sources, review them, and find the mistake. And actually, you could very easily do this on AI. So you could input the article. You could say, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I want to test my students. Could you summarize this article for me, but add a couple of errors? So you don't have to do the work. We can do it like that. Can you put some errors in for me that will make them think, that not obvious numbers, that will make them think a little bit, requires a bit of critical thinking. Now you have a perfect 500-word article that is a bit incorrect. Give that to them, and there you go. You have the answer. Your life is simple, but you also know you're checking their critical thinking as well. So basic example, the water cycle, some mistakes, and you could give them a textbook, for example, cross-check the right words. They have to be able to cross-check, like they can't get the answer without doing the work. So that's interesting. I think it works really well. It's a good activity that can make them think beyond what's given to them at face value. And all of this, as you can probably see, is all about just stopping students from just taking what's given to them by AI and just submitting it and just saying this is correct or accepting it as being correct. We don't do that in real life. We see something on Twitter or social media. We know that things might not be correct. So why have we done that with AI? Obviously, it's very new, so students don't know this. But over time, if we're encouraging them to think about this aspect of AI that's not perfect, then they'll start thinking like that, and that's what you want. So, conclusion and final thoughts. It's a powerful tool. I'm a huge supporter of AI. As we said in the introduction, I have a YouTube channel. I'll share it with you at the end, and I speak all about how to use AI tools in an ethical way. So I'm definitely pro AI right from the beginning, but you want to use it in an ethical way. You want to balance AI use with human judgment. Don't use it, but actually use your brain. We don't want to lose the ability to problem solve and have creativity. You also want to teach AI literacy and ethical awareness and bias. You want to foster inquiry-based learning, so asking questions, debating, reverse engineering, things like that. And then you also, as educators, want to prepare students for the future. If we deny them access to AI, we deny them the use of AI, we're denying them of a really important skill that they're going to be using in the future. And they're going to, they haven't used it here, they don't know how to use it, they'll be stuck putting it out in the real world because it is everywhere, in our personal lives, in professional lives, in academia, so we can't ignore it. We have to find ways of integrating it in a way that will help them and also us as well as educators. So like I said, this is my this is my channel. Feel free to follow me. I've got a little bunch of people following me at the moment, and it's all ethical use of AI. I run workshops in schools, universities. If you'd like me to come to your university or school, drop me a message over there. Happy to come and run some workshops. Any questions? Please let me know.
what I feel is that I agree with all the points that you said, and it was a very good enlightenment. But what made critical for us as educators is that now I think the students are comfortable with AI learning, but what makes it critical for educator is the evaluation. Because you have 100 assignments on the table, all are good content. What is the judgment that you will put on 95, 93, 94 or whatever grades scales we have? So I think AI has made it challenging for the educator in terms of evaluations.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, personally, I wouldn't necessarily change the mark scheme of evaluation because now I think all students have access to AI. So we're assuming that most students are going to use it. So I think the barriers should still, it probably has made it a bit more difficult for students because it means that what might have been 70 before is now 90. But that's, we can't stop or monitor them from using it. So it's a matter of maybe being a little bit more nuanced, a bit more careful on like what requirements are for certain grades or certain barriers. So, critical thinking has to be a really big one. I'll make that a really big one now because that requires actual thought and bringing things together. So certain things that that AI can't do as well, I bring that up a little bit more. But I'd also probably balance my assessment between things that they can do in person that you can assess and things that they would do by themselves. So that would, how I'll change things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the insightful presentation. You suggested to use that during the class, right?
Yeah.
So not at home.
No, both. Yeah. I mean, you could do certain tasks as a longer activity and do it, but you can then discuss it in the classroom. So the ultimate thing is they need your advice and kind of your discussion, but you can do both.
But I mean, like if they do that at home, then they can use AI to cross-check with the journal article.
They could, yeah.
Right.
It's true.
And also to identify all the biases.
This is true.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't completely avoid it, but the idea is that they then come and discuss it in the classroom.
Okay.
So the idea is, it's more just, this is not an assignment, so it's not something that would be graded per se, but it's more for awareness. So how can you ensure that they're aware of these things? So you could then come to the classroom and you can discuss it, and they know it now. Even if they used it, they now know it. So the next time would still, if they use AI, now they know to do that, which they wouldn't have done before. So yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. We always say like work smart, not hard.
Yeah.
And at the same time we say we need to use AI ethically, even for us as educator or for the student themselves. So from your point of view, what's the thin line between these two concepts from an educator perspective and as a student, previously a PhD student, like how you managed to overcome this challenge?
I think the way I see it is that there's certain things that AI can do that will make our life easier in terms of productivity. So I don't know, there's think about PhD, I would analyze like tons of data. It's a really boring task. I'm not using my brain, I'm just clicking buttons. Now AI can do that in seconds. So something like that, I'm more than happy for AI to do. That's working smarter, not harder, right? Because I just have to do certain repeated things. So now I can now spend that 2 hours that I would have spent doing this on something else. Right? Analyzing research papers, there are tools that can look at 100 research papers and give you summaries. That's amazing, because it saves me days and days, right? So there's certain things I think you should still do by yourself, and there's certain things that AI can do. So it's about looking at, what are you just allowing AI to do? Yeah, it makes it a bit easier. But you still have to use your brain. I don't think it takes away from that aspect of things. Especially in academia, there's meetings, there's conferences, there's talks, presentations. You can't escape speaking about it, and it's obvious if you don't know what you're saying.
You are running the whole conference.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't know what you're saying, then it's really obvious. So I think as long as there's still like in-person events or things where they have to speak about their research, they can't escape it if they don't. Yeah. Yes.
Right, sorry, I'm not an educator, but I'm a former student. So by your insightful presentation, could you say that participation in discussion will be a very critical metric in the grading system, instead of as opposed to student just copy pasting? I feel like discussion is something that will help us understand the grading class.
Absolutely. I think that kind of echoes what you're saying. Like, I think now we need to think less about here's an assignment that's 95% of your grade that you do at home. There needs to be a balance between, okay, 50% will be what, discussion, maybe smaller groups. Yeah, things like where you can actually see that I know what I'm speaking about, and then X% is written, because we still need the written side of things. Yeah, so it's about, I think, just changing. And I think I quite like that because not every student does well with written things anyway, so now it's balancing it out a little bit more. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.